Today's story is about an angry, spiteful moon. It is from the Tlingit Indians of Alaska. The moon plays an important part in the lives of the Tlingits because most of their food comes from the sea. The moon was considered to be a powerful god to be reckoned with. The Tlingits have a very rich culture and a strong imagination. In today's story, look for the many beautiful examples of Tlingit designs. You will notice the symbol of an eagle perched on the bow of a boat, on the totems, and on the grandmother's house. This design is based on an old Tlingit legend of Eagle Woman who turned herself into an eagle in order to save her children. The design on grandmother's dress is from a spoon, because you see, the Tlingits made beautiful incised spoons out of animal horn. And you will see faces which look like ceremonial masks. In many Indian legends, people are transformed into animals and other beings in order to accomplish their goals. The masks worn in ceremonies which depict these tales are called transformation masks. Look for the moon crest on the moon's house and a whale design on the blankets. In fact, be sure to watch very closely. You'll see designs representing the Northwest Coast Indians throughout the entire story. But apart from the designs, the angry moon may be similar to other stories that you've heard before. Tell me if it is. It's now time to listen to The Tale of the Angry Moon. One very bright summer night, when the moon was full, Lupin and Lapuinsa were walking in the grassy country that surrounded their village. They were good friends. Tonight, the moon was full and especially bright. It almost seemed to be watching them. Lapuinsa laughed and said, "What a funny face the moon has! How ugly it is!" "Be quiet," said Lupin. "It is not good to speak badly about the moon." Suddenly, the field was covered in darkness, and a strange shimmering rainbow appeared from out of the shadows and surrounded Lapuinsa. She was frightened and cried out for Lupin. He stepped toward her, and the rainbow disappeared, and the darkness disappeared, and Lapuinsa disappeared. Lupin was all alone in the bright moonlight. He called and called, but there was no Lapuinsa. He ran to the top of a hill and cried. "The moon has taken her," he thought. As his tears dried, he looked up at the sky and saw a brilliant star right beside the moon. A strange idea came into his mind. "I wonder if I can hit the star." He took out his bow and arrow, and aiming very carefully at the star, shot at the star. The star disappeared. Strangely, his arrow did not come back. Again and again Lupin shot his arrows towards the empty space where the star had been. The arrows never returned. Lupin had been shooting arrows all night. And with the first rays of the morning sun, the line of arrows turned into a ladder leading up to the sky. Without knowing why, Lupin picked some branches from a nearby bush and put them in his hair. And then he began to climb the ladder up into the sky. He was afraid. Powerful winds made the ladder spin around. A sudden rainstorm poured down on him, and the ladder became wet and slippery. He hung on tightly and did not fall. He was still climbing the ladder when night came. Lupin wrapped himself about the ladder and fell asleep. The sunrise of another day shone on Lupin. He had never seen the sun so bright. The heaviness of his head made him reach up to touch it. He put his hand up to find that the branches in his hair had grown into bushes full of big, sweet berries. He was amazed, but he was also very hungry, so he ate the berries and threw away the branches. All day long he climbed above the clouds. At nightfall, he reached the top of the ladder. He was very tired, so he lay down and fell asleep. He was awakened by a small voice.
"Wake up! I am coming for you. Wake up! My grandmother wishes me to bring you to her. She has been watching you climb here from Earth."
Lupin was very surprised. There was a small boy looking at him. And so Lupin followed the boy over the sky road to the grandmother's house. She was glad to see Lupin and welcomed him. They sat around the fire. The grandmother said,
"It is I who helped you on your way to this country. I could tell you were brave and had great need to come up to the sky."
"I have come to find La Puinza," Lupin said.
"Yes," said the grandmother. "She has been captured by the moon who lives near here."
They could hear La Puinza's voice wailing in the distance. Lupin wanted to go to her, but the old grandmother told him to eat first, to regain his strength. She raised her hand 3 times, and each time food appeared. First, a fish appeared. Then a toasted ear of corn. She raised her hand a 3rd time, and fresh fruit appeared. Lupin ate hungrily and felt refreshed.
"Now, when you go to the house of the moon, you must take 4 things."
The grandmother gave him a pine cone and a fish eye, then a rose and a small stone. He was to use these to help him rescue La Puinza. Lupin hurried into the land of the moon. The closer he came to the moon's house, the louder La Puinza's cries became, and he began to run. Now he could see her up on the roof, caught in the smoke hole, with the fire licking at her heels. He quietly ran to the roof so that the moon could not hear him. La Puinza was so happy to see him, she stopped crying. "Don't stop crying," Lupin whispered. "Cry louder. I don't want the moon to know that you are getting away." So she cried louder as Lupin pulled her from the smoke hole. He put the pine cone in the smoke hole, and it made a crying sound, just like La Puinza. Hand in hand, they started to run. Then the pine cone stopped crying, and the moon became very angry. He had been tricked. He thundered out of his house, speeding after La Puinza and Lupin. He rolled much faster than they could run. Lupin turned and threw the fisheye at him. And where it fell, a large lake appeared. The moon was going so fast he could not stop and rolled into the lake. He was wet and cold as he rolled out of the lake. He had to roll around the lake, but he was fast. He quickly caught up to Lupin and La Puinza. Lupin threw the rose at the moon, and he became tangled in roses and thorns. As he came through them, he was very angry. He rolled even faster. When Lupin saw the moon behind them, he threw the stone at the moon, and a huge mountain appeared. It was too high for the moon to climb. It just rolled up and down again. Tired and breathless, Lupin and Lapuinsa finally reached the grandmother's house. They were welcomed by the grandmother and the child, and they rested. Then the grandmother said,
"Your ladder is waiting for you. You may return to your home on Earth if you wish."
They said goodbye and started to climb down the ladder, down through the thick, puffy clouds. As they reached the earth, the sun was setting. The rays of the sun touched the ladder, and it disappeared, leaving a pile of arrows on the ground. The children picked them up and put them in their quiver. Then they joyfully ran home. The people of the village were very happy to see them, and for the rest of their lives, people came from far and near to hear their story about the angry moon. The story is still told in the village today. Did this story remind you of other stories you've heard before? I'll bet it did. The angry moon may have reminded you of Hansel and Gretel. You see, stories from all over the world can be very similar. In the American Indian tribes, the storytellers were considered very important people because all of the stories have such deep meanings. The Indians respected the storytellers and loved them. Look for Tlingit and other stories of the Northwest Coast Indians. You can find them in your school or public library. Share a story with a friend so our tales will never end.
The preceding program was funded in part by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.